Hi, I'm Risa Seelenfreund with Diligencia Talent Consulting. Business is far from usual, so the leadership approaches that you usually take may not be as effective or even as appropriate as they typically would be. So today I'd like to share with you three very specific things that you can do to help your team be successful in times of crisis. As many of you know, I like to use acronyms because they help to remember concepts. So today's acronym is CDC, Compassion, Deliverables, and Communication, and it focuses on the health of your team. So let's start with our first letter, C, compassion. It's really important to focus right now on being empathetic and caring toward your team. If you're more likely to show that you care about what they're going through, they're more likely to care for the team and to do their work and to be productive. So not only is this important from a humane perspective, from a business perspective, you can ensure that your team is more productive in the short term and in the long term by taking the time to be empathetic rather than ignoring the difficulties that they may be going through at home. Now, for those of you who tend not to show emotion, particularly in the workplace, I get that this may be a struggle for you, but I challenge you to take this on as an opportunity to connect with your team. If you make the effort to connect with them, they are more likely to connect and to make that effort for the team. So for both the short-term and the long-term success of your team, this is a really helpful strategy for you as a leader. The second piece of our acronym is D for deliverables. Now is not the time to be focusing on your team sitting at their desks for hours at a time. I heard a story of a manager who's insisting that his entire team stay on Zoom all day long so he can track that they're working at their desks for 8 to 10 hours a day. Not that that's ever a good leadership approach, but now in particular, where people may be having some struggles at home, this is not about hours in front of a computer. You can set, and absolutely should, hold your team accountable for achieving outcomes and deliverables, but it's not about, as I said, hours in front of the computer. It's important to set dates and times and let them know when they need to be available to be on team calls and such, but it is not about hours at a computer. The third piece of our acronym is C, communication. As important as communication is to leaders at all times, it is particularly important when your team is isolated from one another. They need to know that they are still part of a team. So having regular, predictable team meetings is really important. If you can do one-on-one check-ins as well, that would be helpful. Now, I use the word check-in, not check up on, and that's a really important distinction. This is the time to check in and make sure your team is doing okay, answer any questions they may have, not to check up on them and make sure that they are doing their work. It's also helpful to remind your team about having a shared purpose, particularly when they are isolated and they're working on their own. Reminding them of this shared purpose can be really helpful for them to continue working toward their work goals. And finally, as the leader, it's important that you set expectations and rules of engagement for the team. Again, not that they be sitting at their desk for 8 to 12 hours a day, but what's expected of them in terms of completing deliverables, of when they should be available, when you're available for team calls. Lay that all out so there are no misconceptions and no misunderstandings. So to review, it's really important as a leader right now in times of crisis to focus on three specific things, and that's the acronym CDC, compassion, deliverables, and communication. And I want to end by sharing with you something that I recently read in Harvard Business Review. They say, research shows that employees look to their managers for cues on how to react to sudden changes or crisis situations. So now, more than ever, your role as a leader and as a role model is vitally critical to the success of your team. If you have any questions or want more information, feel free to reach out. I'm available at risas@optonline.net. That's RISAS@optonline.net. Thank you and be well.